Okay, we're now on to our next lesson, which we're going to be covering class of service. So you'll notice that we're still on the individual user page. I'm going to go ahead and click on class of service, which is right below user groups. And you'll see that we have the type of permissions listed here. So the first type of permissions is telephony permissions. That would be features on the phones. The second permissions would be call permissions, so that would be outgoing calls or how they're dialing out of the system. And the third is, of course, voicemail permissions. So let's look at the first one, which is telephony permissions. We're going to look at fully featured. Again, all of these have the same ability to have or deny those features. We just rename them based on what you're using them for. So I'm going to click on fully featured. So I'm going to briefly go through these just so you have a general idea of what every one of these means. You'll see the first one is call stack. We kind of referenced that in a previous lesson. This is where you're determining how many phone calls they can take at the same time. They can never go more than the number that's listed here. So as an example, we would make a new user group or a class of service for the operator. I would also assign that class of service to allow more calls for an operator than 3. Buddies has to do with IMing. And then we see the maximum conference calls. So we have an option of 3, 4, 5, and 6. The default is always 3. It's 6 if we've given the resources for the system. So again, let's make sure when we talk about maximum parties in the conferencing that you have the resources for that. IM presence invitation, again, you can see that's pretty straightforward. We don't use that very often because IMing requires you to have external hardware in place for that software to function. So call pickup, everyone understands what a call pickup is. The next one is trunk-to-trunk transfer. That basically means that I can take a call and I can then dial someone outside the system. And if I want to get out of that call and allow those 2 outside parties to talk, I would hang up my phone and the system would then allow those 2 parties to talk without me being involved with the call. Something else to be aware of is that that trunk-to-trunk permission has to be allowed for the Find Me feature to work on the voicemail user group. So that's something that we always set for you so that it would work. If that gets unchecked, then the Find Me destinations won't allow those 2 outside parties to talk as well. So something to be aware of. Overhead and group paging, that's pretty straightforward. We understand what paging is. Make hunt group busy, that's a feature for a supervisor. That's not used very often. Most people use work groups, so you really don't have to worry about that feature. Extension reassignment, that's the ability to go to another phone and log in through the voicemail and allow you to take over someone else's phone. As an example, you go to the conference room and maybe you're going to be working there for the day. You would take over that phone, and this feature allows that ability to happen. That Pstn Failover, we talked about that a little bit earlier. That's ability to receive a call via the telephone company instead of going through the network by dialing the same extension number that you would normally dial without dialing the phone number. Okay, show caller ID name and number for other extensions. That feature should never be allowed unless you are wanting to see exactly who the person is talking to on the other end. So this would be in an operator call manager environment or in a professional call manager environment. And again, that feature we hardly ever turn on because most of the time people don't want them to know who they're talking to. They're okay with knowing that they're on the phone and how long they've been on the phone, but not really the extension number of the person they're talking to. So that's more of a supervisory feature in like a call center, an environment where you need to see that information. So again, that's available. Enumerate individual held calls for unpark. If you understand the feature of parking and unparking, this will allow someone to understand which call park is which number, 1, 2, 3, if there's multiple park calls. That probably doesn't happen very often. Again, if you really want some more information about that, then I would look at the user guide. Actually, you could come up to the top and hit the help at any time, and you can kind of read about that feature. It's not used very often. Allow customization of IP phone buttons and call manager monitored windows. Again, that's a feature that allows someone to manually program a button on their phone via the telephone using the options menu that's listed on the phone itself. So again, that's not used very often, but some people do want the ability to manage their own phone. I prefer to have the administrators do that as well. Show extension with different prefixes in directory. Again, that's for a larger firm when you have multiple directory entries and you have multiple sites. You want to be able to differentiate a phone number like this begins with a 1 or begins with a 2. So if your extension was 1000, their extension was 2000, it would just sort those in a better order by that first digit. Allow collaboration feature should always be turned on. That's the ability for call coverage. Don't turn that off. And again, allow recording of own calls. We understand what that is. And intersite video calls. Intersite video calls requires a professional call manager. So if you do not have a call manager that's a professional, you cannot use the feature. So again, don't assign features to individuals that don't have the rights to use them. Direct intercom paging, that is allowed. And again, I just want to kind of look at all of the options that are coming up. These are really much more for a supervisor or someone that's going to be managing a group of people. Intercom you might use system-wide, but again, if you look, there's an ability to initiate that, and then there's ability to accept. So if you're initiating a conference, an intercom, you have to be able to accept it if you want the other party on the other end to hear that intercom or to hear even that whisper page. As well as with the barge in, you've got initiate and you have accept. Now, you can limit that exception to being only from an individual, but that is a single individual. So most people have to go with an all or nothing type environment if they have multiple people that are going to barge into the same phone. Recording other calls, pretty straightforward. Silent monitor and coaching others. Again, that silent monitor and coach feature is usually used in an environment where you have maybe a call distribution group and you have a supervisor either managing a group of people that need to break into those calls, maybe in a sales application as well. Again, those features have to be allowed. Allow call handling changes. Again, these call changes, you can say I don't allow them to make the changes to their call handling modes, so you can block those features. Now, allow external call forwarding and find me. Again, you're just allowing those feature sets. And then allow external call assignment. You have to tell them where they can call for those external call assignments. So most of the time it's international, it's national or all calls. You don't really, I think most people don't use local there. And then down at the bottom you can restrict or allow specific numbers. Now, the way restrictions work, we'll cover this more in the next section when we go into the class of service for calling out, but it works the same here. So I'll cover that in more detail in the next session or the next section of this lesson. So that's everything that we have to talk about on these class of services for telephone permissions. So we're going to move on now to the second section, which would be call permissions or calling out.